Hey, hi everyone. Welcome to your show, E-Coffee with Experts. This is your host, Ranmay here. And today we have Peter Mead, SEO consultant from Australia, joining us. Hi, Peter. How's it going?
Very well. Thank you, Ranmay, for having me on the show.
Lovely. Peter, before we move any forward, let's get to know the human behind the mic. I know you're quite famous, but, can you share a bit about your early years? How were you growing up as a child and how did you get into the SEO, digital marketing space? And then also about, what are you into right now and some exciting stuff that you're onto?
Yeah, that's great. Thanks for asking. Yeah, look, I guess, I've been doing this kind of thing for a while and a lot of people do recognize me,
Hmm.
in the SEO space. But I guess, if I was to share a few things about my history, let's say about perhaps some of my thinking, and you mentioned there about what sort of things, like as a child. I mean, I grew up in the 70s and 80s, and which was long before. I mean, things were very different. Technology was very different
Yeah.
in those days, and we had
Hmm.
wild. I had a wild imagination, and I really sort of was fixated on, as a kid, I was sort of caught up in all of the sci-fi and I just things like Star Trek and yeah, Star Wars, and one of the things that I really was fascinated was this idea of like a handheld communication device, like something
Yeah.
where it was a handheld computer or sort of a communication, this kind of thing. Of course, and then so I mean, I guess that sort of shows my age, along with my grey whiskers. Maybe help to explain a little bit about the journey I've been on over the years. Because, of course, in the 1990s and this kind of thing, well, we realised that we could have mobile phones, and that sci-fi is sort of becoming real, and of course now here we are, um, moving into a world where in the 1990s I got involved in the World Wide Web project. We were using dial-up modems and making websites using Notepad, and HTML was cool, and Netscape Navigator was a great idea, and Windows
Yeah.
95, this sort of thing. So it was a real kind of a journey over the years, and all this was before Google, of course.
Hmm.
But when in the early 2000s, when Google really kind of exploded onto the scene, and it replaced a lot of other search engines sort of overnight, like Alta Vista and Excite and InfoSeek. Of course, Yahoo was one of them as well. I mean, Yahoo kept
Yeah.
kind of competing with Google for a while, but really Google came along and just sort of wiped the slate clean, and since then we've really sort of everybody really since then, there's really only been one big kind of a search engine that we've all looked to, and of course until
Hmm.
just recently, when some more major disruption has come along with AI, really sort of
Yeah.
ChatGPT launched on and really took over and changed the way we think about information and the way we type into the prompt. And of course,
Hmm.
we're seeing Google making massive changes. Some of that's in response, but some of it obviously is to keep their competitive edge as well. We're now moving into the age of kind of Gemini, So I think there's been that sort of helps you to understand. I mean, I think the I've really
Yeah.
been into the sort of web technologies over the years, and that's where I remain focused, because I think you need to sort of have that bigger picture of the sort of the World Wide Web philosophy, the idea of what it is. Because I mean, at the end of the day, it's all about what people want to achieve by using these systems, and if they can't
Hmm.
achieve, if people are, people at the end of the day they're trying to find information, they're trying to find products, and they're going to go to the place where they can find them and where it suits them and the thing that fits into their lifestyle. And so that's really a bit about my philosophy and my background right there.
Uh-huh. And when was that moment, when you thought about it, this is it. I'm going to make SEO my career.
Yeah, the penny drop. Yes, there was, and it's an interesting one because lots of different SEOs have a different pathway to that point where they kind of something ticks the box,
Hmm.
and of course, as I said, I played around with we were making websites and we were playing around with using Linux systems and using VI and creating websites and trying to connect databases with in the early days, and then I was also I sort of because of I was heavily into software and I was working as the head of a small software department, and we were creating Microsoft.NET intranet software, and I had a team of about 7 developers, and we were building these in-house systems to for the underlying systems to support this local telco, local
Hmm.
telecommunications company,
Yeah.
and so part of that also was part of our we were called it was called e-solutions is what it was called, and it was all part of sort of the IT thing. IT was a whole different thing back in those days. It was really,
Absolutely.
nowadays you think of IT, you just think of computer and networks and all that. But back then, IT was very much more encompassing, and it really involved things like web development and all this.
Hmm.
Um, so we were also making websites for the local community, for small businesses, and building websites, and we were
Hmm.
just sort of playing around with getting into search engines. Like we weren't really serious about it. We were just playing. It was all sort of playing around and just doing things like copying keywords and pasting them into the keywords section in the code, and doing getting links from DMOZ, and kind of doing some pretty sort of wacky stuff with keyword cloaking and to stuffing and everything, and it
Yeah.
just seemed like it was pretty easy to sort of get some results. But it wasn't
Hmm.
until I got a serious request from a pretty reasonable sized company, and the request was, we really want to get serious about being found in Google, and that was early
Hmm.
2000s. And so I undertook this project, and then it was, we really did well. We sort of ended up with some really big rankings out of that for this business, the national business,
Okay.
and we got then I guess it was the recognition at that point, because lots of my colleagues saw what I was doing and recognized that it was actually, of course, to them they were bewildered. They had no understanding of how this could be done, and to me it was
Hmm.
very much just following through the process of good practices. And so that website's still doing quite well today, actually. That was more than 20 years ago. But I'm not sort of pinning all of that success on what I did, but I certainly gave them a good starting foundation back in those days. But that was the thing where I thought, yeah, this is
And
really
which is so
quite.
important, right? Which is so important. And this can be a lesson for, the the young guys or the early starters in our industry, wherein, a lot of, today's businesses kind of look at quick fixes and quick wins, and we have these jargons kind of going around, but the base is not there, right? I mean, the industry has evolved so much. It's quite difficult to kind of stand on it for that long a time. I mean, if you're really serious about your business, if you want to do it for a certain amount of time, then you got to be, kind of looking at, making it as strong as it can be, when you're starting out, versus looking at just those quick fixes to kind of rank and,
Yeah.
get the phones ringing.
Absolutely, Ranmay. That is such an important thing, because we as SEOs, we understand that Google has a memory like an elephant, you know, and
Yeah.
doesn't forget anything, you know, and even if you get penalized and if you submit, you know, reconsideration requests, or if you have a history of disavowing and all these things, yes, you can recover, but that it's still in the history books of, you know. So
Yeah.
I think it's really good if you can approach those SEO campaigns with a clean slate and really try to just put all those pieces in place that make sense. I mean, it is difficult, right? And I mean, I'm not
Yeah.
saying I'm not. I mean, over the years, I certainly got involved in some things that I didn't at the time. I didn't understand. Looking back, I'm just kicking myself really. But at the time, I think we were all kind of doing things that were just it just seemed like was the done thing, you know. But you look back,
Yeah.
and a lot of the practices, things came along like Penguin, and websites got smashed with Penguin, and the Panda update came
Yeah.
along and websites got smashed with, and businesses, they went out of business. They literally had to close up the shop because they were penalized so
Yeah.
badly. You know, things like Penguin, it just put people out of business forever, right? Um,
Very true.
but anyway, that was the thing that flicked the switch in me. Was the first campaign that I did seriously, which really, you know,
Hmm.
and people could see the results of that in the early
Hmm.
2000s, and that was the first one that flicked the switch, and I was like, yeah, I'm hooked on this, because it was sort of halfway between tech and halfway between marketing, and
Hmm.
yeah.
And then you have been in the space for quite some time, Peter. How do you see the evolution of AI and all the technology, and then what is the most exciting thing that you're doing in your agency or for your clients,
Mm,
related to AI or Chat GPT or whichever tool that you're using?
mm, mm. Yes. So the technology, I find, you know, technology moves quickly, and especially in the space with AI and things, you know, web technologies and um let's say websites, CMSs, you know, where
Hmm.
there's questions about how long some of this technology is going to last when AI becomes so good, you know.
Yeah.
So I'm fairly transient when it comes to technologies. What I am very passionate about is the team development. Like I said, I've got a good, really solid team that I'm proud of, with their SEO consultants, and very
Hmm.
experienced. And I believe in the power of experience when it comes to good quality SEO. And
100%.
you know, and sort of an experienced SEO can pick up technologies and move fast, and you know, because technologies come and go. I mean, next thing you know, boom, we've got out of the blue, we have,
Yeah.
you know, DeepSeek comes along, and next thing you know, it's Claude, and you know, and then, you know, who knows, ChatGPT 5 should be coming maybe soon. You know, we don't know, right? And then by the end of this year, I mean, I don't know whether it's soon, but sort of Google is really pushing with Gemini, and there's every chance that Google will kind of end up on top. You know, they have such a massive user base, and if
Yeah.
Gemini product is good, and if it's put in front of the user, everyone has Gmail, everyone has a Google login, and if they all have a chance to play with Gemini, I mean, who knows? We might even see the search engine sort of over time sort of evolving more. So we already have the AI overviews. Maybe the search engine, you know, the 10 blue links will just sort of fade away. And then over time, we might see
Hmm.
the search results are more like a Gemini prompt, you know, so when we
Yeah.
search, you know, it's interesting where it will all go. But where I think is that, you know, these technologies, they sort of come and go, and some of them really have a lasting effect. But I think really where I see is what kinds of technologies, you know, and what kinds of tools and platforms are the best thing to help us achieve what our customers want to do. And what do
Mm-hmm.
our customers want to find out about? Where are they going to
Mm-hmm.
find their information? And how are they interacting with our business? And if we can get
Mm-hmm.
those, if we can put all those pieces in place and be, like the sort of SEO, which was for the longest time was search engine optimization. It was all about Google for the longest time, but this is all
Yeah.
getting turned up now. It's really, I've sort of heard a few people saying, so SEO should stand for search everywhere omnipresence.
Yeah.
It's very different. People are talking about branding SEO and really kind of going broad, going lateral across
Yeah.
the board on SEO these days. So it'll be really interesting to see where it goes.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And Peter, you are known, for an analysis first and prioritize approach. So how do you balance data-driven insights and with the creative side of SEO to ensure both technical and strategic excellence for the projects that you work on?
Yeah, that is a great question, and of course that has also been quite challenging in recent times. For the longest time, we had some really good products. We it was a very common thing to be able to pitch to a client. We're going to do a data driven SEO campaign, and we're going to work closely with your PPC, and all of the conversions and the attribution, and we can see your channels, and we know exactly where all the traffic's coming from, and where is your conversion and your sales coming from, and does this 30% goes to PPC and 55% goes to SEO, and
Yeah.
20% goes to direct traffic, and all these channels, and everything was neatly laid out, and we were doing these reports to clients, and we had we knew there was still a margin of error, right, around this, and we could do we could do some pivot tables on Excel, and we could match up some of the data and find the gaps, and do some attribution work in that way to get very particular about
Mhm.
that. Of course, in recent years, we've seen lots of sub features that have changed, and things that are, around the zero click and all this, and around even perhaps lots of the things like, what about the traffic that's coming from, let's say, AI overviews? People who do click on it, if it's because it's a reduced, we know that it's more like a zero click, but it's not zero. We know people do click on it, but the
Mhm.
attribution around that is much more complicated now to be able to report on. And so there is certainly, I think though there are some questions around where this is going, and I think there's a shift that's needed to be
Mhm.
more around exposure and more around visibility, and
Yeah.
then and also more around um, conversions. So actually optimizing conversions, and a little bit less about optimizing, about perhaps giving a bit more leeway where we're saying, we're trying to do attribution and saying, well, this click was PPC, this click was SEO, this click was
Yeah.
direct traffic, because we know that people, they change browsers, they use they use a VPN, all kinds of things happen, and the attribution is lost. And
Mhm.
it's very common now for the attribution just not to match up quite so much. But
Mhm.
I think that if we look at it more from a point of view of, well, we're working with the marketing team, so the SEO is the bigger picture. It's part of your marketing, it's part of your social media, it's part of your
Mhm.
marketing, and we look at the whole effort of the whole team, and we can see, we can, so there is a little bit less there about the attribution that's leading to it, but I think the overall efforts, it's more of a holistic thing, I think, where we've got to get to. I think the days of companies really fussing over attribution,
Mhm.
it's a bit troublesome now,
Absolutely. And then finally, Peter, you being a keynote speaker, at places, kind of puts you at the forefront of industry conversations, and you have been there for quite some time. So for our young listeners today, how and what advice would you want to give to them in terms of leveraging these platforms, and these conferences, or let's say podcasts,
Mm.
which we're doing, to kind of build a brand for their own agencies. Someone who's starting out on their entrepreneur journey has built his or her own agency in the recent past.
Yeah, I mean, conferences, meetups, this kind of thing. I mean, as I said, when I sort of first got involved in the 1990s, with the sort of the World Wide Web project, and I was reading about people like Tim Berners-Lee, and we were sharing information. So it was a project, and there was a very much and this idea. There was this concept that it was all about sharing information and ideas, and we're all figuring this all out as we went. We're all just trying to, and if we figured out something, we're like, oh, we figured out how to do this thing, and so all those ideas were shared freely. You know,
Yeah.
um, and so yes, there is sort of the big tech, which is very, the ideas are closed, the proprietary. But
Mhm.
in terms of, I think if you are wanting to, further your career and move into those spaces, absolutely, conferences, uh, asking questions, getting yourself known, going to meetups, and joining forums. So one of the things that I was involved in Melbourne back in about 2011, I um, I joined. I was one of the original members of a meetup group called the Melbourne SEO Meetup Group, and that was started by a fellow called David Iwanow. And then he since moved on and went to Denmark and furthered his career. But some of us took over, Chris Burgess, and we sort of went, and carried this forward and kept this going over the years. So we've been going ever since. But now it's emerged into, it's changed its name. We've changed the name now. It's
Mhm.
called the Melbourne. It's called the SEO Collective, and that's in Melbourne, Sydney, and Brisbane. And some people like Nick Ranger, she's involved in organising the Melbourne one. I'm very much in the background nowadays of the meetup groups. But if you're in Australia and if you're in Melbourne or Sydney or Brisbane, find out where your local SEO collective meetup is and get along, because this is where we're sharing ideas, we're talking, and so many conversations are happening every month. We're talking about things, and there's also an offline. We
Mhm.
have a Slack group as well that you can join. A Slack group. We have several hundred members in there in the Slack group as well. So I would say this is where it is to share that knowledge, and don't be afraid to, I think that you've got to get the experience. You have to be able to have
Mhm.
a go and try things and get that experience.
Absolutely, absolutely, Peter. Thank you so much for the wise words. And finally, before we let you go, let's play a quick rapid fire if you're game for it.
Okay,
Yeah. All right. Your last Google search.
last Google search was my last Google search was I I I think it was ChatGPT actually.
Okay. 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 What did you do with the first paycheck, Peter?
First paycheck.
Yeah,
Was
first one of your life.
first one of my life. I actually started when I was about 13 years old, delivering newspapers on push bike, and I would go
Mm-hmm.
out at 5 in the morning on freezing cold mornings and deliver the Herald Sun. And so
Mm-hmm.
it would have been buying cassette tapes. I think it was a Cure tape. The head on the door was the Cure. Something like, it would have been like I was definitely buying I was buying music cassettes, and playing them in my Walkman. The That's why I was
Yeah.
sort of cool when I watched the Guardians of the Galaxy. You had a Walkman, and I was thinking, that's
Right.
cool. It's the kind of
Yeah. All
yeah.
right. And your favorite sport?
My favorite sport is weightlifting in the gym. I've taken that up as a hobby, and so it's one of my pastimes now. I
Mm-hmm.
every morning I try to get into the gym and lift some weights and get my body into shape. Yeah.
Absolutely. I mean, obviously, you look like, right? So, okay, the final one, I mean, the last one will not grill you any further. Where do you find Peter on Friday evenings after work?
Friday evenings after work. Well, I it could be the book club. I I have
Ah,
the
okay.
local book club, and
Mm-hmm.
another one where there is the local there was a local dance group that I've been involved in as well, where
Lovely.
I do a bit of dancing. It's a bit of a club where we do certain dancing, that kind of thing. So
Yeah, after you've done all the SEO dance for your clients, right? That's where you go.
that's right.
Uh, all right, Peter, this has been a brilliant conversation, and I'm sure our audience would resonate with your thoughts and the insights which you have shared. Once again, thank you so much for taking out time to do this with us.
Thank you, Ranmay. It's been great, and I hope your audience finds it interesting. And yeah, it's going to be an interesting time. I think 2025. I think we'll see a lot of changes in SEO.
Absolutely, man. Looking forward to it.